March 15, 1935, Savoy Ballroom, Harlem, 11:47 p.m. The music stopped. Duke Ellington stood frozen at his piano, Dom Pérignon champagne dripping from his face, his tuxedo soaked, his dignity shattered in front of 200 witnesses. Vincent, Vic the Blade, Romano, capo in Dutch Schultz's organization, was laughing. Loud, cruel, satisfied. He just sprayed 200 worth of champagne at America's greatest jazz musician like he was watering a lawn. Dance, boy, Vic shouted. Earn that paycheck. That's when every person in the Savoy Ballroom turned to look at one man standing against the back wall. A man whose hand was already moving to his waistband. Not for a gun, but for something far more personal. Bumpy Johnson carried a straight razor, and Vic Romano had just signed his own death warrant. The crown jewel of Harlem, the Savoy Ballroom, wasn't just another club. It was revolutionary. While the famous Cotton Club downtown forced black performers to entertain white-only audiences, the Savoy was different. Integrated. Black and white danced on the same floor, shared the same air, existed in a rare bubble of equality that didn't exist anywhere else in 1935 America. They called it the Home of Happy Feet, a massive block-long dance hall on Lenox Avenue between 140th and 141st Streets. 2 bandstands, a polished maple floor that could hold 4,000 dancers, and tonight, Duke Ellington's orchestra was making that floor shake. But Bumpy Johnson wasn't there to dance. He stood against the back wall watching, always watching. At 28 years old, Bumpy had already earned his reputation as Harlem's protector, not through loudness or flash, but through calculated violence and unwavering principle. The man with the razor, Bumpy, was dressed in his signature style, charcoal 3-piece suit tailored to perfection, white shirt, black tie, patent leather shoes, and in a custom sheath inside his waistband, 7 inches of Sheffield steel honed to an edge that could split a hair. People asked him why he carried a razor instead of a gun like every other gangster in New York. Bumpy would smile and say, "Guns are loud. Guns bring police. A razor is personal." Tonight, Vincent Romano would learn what personal meant. The Italian problem. At a table near the stage sat Vic Romano with 6 of his guys, all Italian, all armed, all drunk. They'd been making noise all night. Racist comments delivered just loud enough to be heard. Laughter at the black dancers. Crude remarks about the women. Bumpy had been watching them, waiting. Vic Romano wasn't just any mobster. He was a capo in Dutch Schultz's organization, the German Jewish crime boss who controlled half of New York's underworld. Schultz wanted Harlem, its numbers rackets, its speakeasies, its entire economy. And men like Vic were his advanced scouts, testing boundaries, pushing limits. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd forgotten where they were. The moment everything changed, Duke hit the climax of "It Don't Mean a Thing," his fingers flying across the piano keys, the horns building, the crowd mesmerized. That's when Vic Romano grabbed the champagne bottle. He stood up, popped the cork, and sprayed it directly at Duke Ellington. The champagne hit Duke mid-note, soaked his tuxedo, splashed onto the piano, got in his face, his eyes. The orchestra faltered, the music died. Duke stood there, dripping, his face frozen in that careful neutrality black performers had learned to wear when white men humiliated them. The Savoy went silent. Not the comfortable silence of a pause between songs. The suffocating silence of 200 people holding their breath, knowing something terrible was about to happen. And Bumpy Johnson pushed off the wall and started walking. The walk of death, click, click, patent leather on maple. His footsteps echoed across the polished floor. People moved aside without being asked. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Bumpy's right hand rested on his waistband. Casual, deliberate. Everyone in that room who knew him recognized the gesture. Not a gun, the razor. Vic was still laughing when Bumpy reached his table. The laughter died when he looked up and saw Bumpy's face. No anger, no rage, just empty, cold calculation. The expression of a man deciding exactly how much pain to inflict. "Stand up, Vic," Bumpy said quietly. It wasn't a request. The confrontation. Vic tried to grin, tried to play tough. "What's your problem, boy?" The word, boy, echoed through the Savoy like a gunshot. Bumpy didn't blink. His hand moved to his jacket slowly, deliberately, and he pulled out the razor still in its sheath, just held it in his palm, the dark leather stark against his skin. I said, "Stand up." This time Vic stood. His 6 guys reached for their weapons. "Tell your boys," Bumpy said, his voice cutting through the room like the blade he carried. "If they clear leather, they won't live long enough to regret it." The 6 men froze. Everyone in Harlem knew the stories. 3 enforcers who'd tried collecting Schultz's tribute last month, found in an alley with their throats opened. A numbers runner who'd betrayed Stephanie's Claire to the Italians. discovered with his tongue cut out, a dirty cop who'd taken mob money to hassle Harlem businesses, fished out of the East River with traitor carved into his chest. Bumpy Johnson didn't make threats, he made promises, and he always kept them. The geography lesson Bumpy stepped closer to Vic, close enough that Vic could smell the bergamot cologne, close enough to see the absolute emptiness in Bumpy's eyes. "You sprayed champagne at Duke Ellington," Bumpy said, his voice barely above a whisper but somehow carrying to every corner of the ballroom during his performance. "In Harlem. You want to explain to me why you thought that was acceptable?" Vic tried to rally. "Look, it was just a joke. A joke." Bumpy's thumb traced the edge of the razor sheath. "Let me tell you a joke, Vic. Last month 3 of Schultz's boys walked into a Harlem barbershop thinking they could shake down the owner. You know what's funny? We're still finding pieces." The color drained from Vic's face. "See, that's what happens when people forget where they are." Bumpy pulled the razor from its sheath. The blade caught the light. 7 inches of gleaming steel. "You're not in the Bronx. You're not in Little Italy. You're in Harlem. And in Harlem we have rules. The rules of Harlem." He held the razor up, letting everyone see it. "Rule number 1, you respect the people. Rule number 2, you respect the music. Rule number 3, the blade glinted as he turned it slowly. You don't humiliate Duke Ellington and expect to walk out of here with the same face you walked in with." Vic's hands were shaking now. "I'm connected. I'm with Dutch Schultz." "Dutch Schultz." Bumpy's laugh was cold. "You think that name scares me? Dutch Schultz doesn't own Harlem. Lucky Luciano doesn't own Harlem. You want to know who owns Harlem?" He stepped even closer, the razor between them. "We do. Every person in this ballroom, every musician on that stage, every dancer on this floor. This is our kingdom, and I'm the man they trust to protect it." The philosophy of violence. Vic was sweating now. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something," Bumpy said softly. "You came into the Savoy thinking you could do whatever you wanted because you're Italian, because you're connected, because you have a gun and 6 guys backing you up, but you made one mistake." He let the silence hang for 3 seconds. "You forgot that a razor is personal." The blade moved, not threatening, just a casual adjustment. But Vic flinched like Bumpy had stabbed him. "Guns are impersonal," Bumpy continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You pull a trigger, man drops. Clean, simple. But a razor," he turned the blade slowly, catching the light. "A razor requires commitment. You have to get close. You have to look a man in the eyes while you open him up. You have to hear him beg. You have to smell his fear." He paused. "And I've gotten very good at it. The choice. So here's what's going to happen," Bumpy continued. "I'm going to give you 2 choices. Choice 1, you apologize to Duke Ellington. Loud, clear, in front of everyone. Then you walk out of the Savoy, you leave Harlem, and you tell Dutch Schultz that this neighborhood is permanently closed to Italian business." Vic's voice cracked. "And choice 2, Bumpy smiled. The kind of smile that made men empty their bowels. "Choice 2 is I open this razor and show you why they call me the King of Harlem." He leaned in until their faces were inches apart. "And Vic, I'm really hoping you pick choice 2. The silence was absolute. 200 people watching, waiting. The only sound was Vic Romano's ragged breathing. Vic's knees buckled slightly. One of his guys moved to support him. "So what's it going to be, Vic? An apology or a demonstration?" "The crawl begins." Vic's voice came out as a croak. "I'll apologize." "Louder. I don't think Duke heard you." Vic turned toward the stage where Duke still stood frozen, watching the surreal confrontation unfold. "I apologize." Vic's voice cracked. "Mr. Ellington, I apologize. It was disrespectful. It was wrong. Look at him when you apologize," Bumpy commanded. "Show him the respect you should have shown from the beginning." Vic met Duke's eyes. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ellington. Truly, it won't happen again." But Bumpy wasn't finished. "Now get on your knees." The Savoy gasped collectively. Even Vic's own men couldn't believe what they were hearing. "What? You heard me? You humiliated Duke Ellington in front of 200 people. You made him feel small, powerless, disrespected. So now you're going to understand what that feels like." Bumpy's voice carried absolute authority. "Get on your knees." The ultimate humiliation. Vic looked around desperately, at his men, at the crowd, at the exits. But there was nowhere to run. Not with Bumpy's razor gleaming in the light. Not with 200 witnesses watching, slowly fighting back tears of rage and shame. Vincent, Vic the Blade, Romano, a made man in one of New York's most powerful crime families, dropped to his knees. The sound echoed through the silent ballroom. "Now crawl," Bumpy said quietly. "Crawl to Duke Ellington and apologize again. Make it sincere this time. Please." Vic whispered. Don't make me. You made your choice when you disrespected a king in his own kingdom. Vic began to crawl, hands and knees across the polished maple floor of the Savoy Ballroom, past 200 witnesses, past his own horrified men, toward the stage where Duke Ellington stood frozen in disbelief. The sound of his hands slapping against the floor echoed like gunshots. When he reached the stage, Vic looked up at Duke with tears of humiliation in his eyes. Mr. Ellington, he said, his voice breaking. I'm sorry. I'm truly deeply sorry. You are a great artist, and I had no right to disrespect you. Duke's response. Duke Ellington, the most dignified man in Harlem, a genius who'd spent his life navigating white America's disrespect with grace, looked down at this broken man who'd crawled across a ballroom floor to apologize. Tears filled Duke's eyes. Not tears of humiliation now, but tears of something else. Pride, vindication, the knowledge that for once, justice had been served. I accept your apology, Duke said quietly. Bumpy walked over to where Vic knelt by the stage. Now crawl back to your table, get your boys, and get out of my sight. Vic crawled back across the floor. His men, faces burning with shame, helped him to his feet. Without a word, they walked out of the Savoy Ballroom like men leaving their own funeral. The celebration, the moment they were gone, the tension broke. Someone started clapping, then another, then the entire ballroom erupted in applause, not just for Duke, for justice, for dignity, for the moment when Harlem stood up for itself and made a powerful man crawl. Bumpy turned to Duke. From the top, Duke, let's give these people what they came for. Duke sat back at the piano. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from emotion. He looked at Bumpy and mouthed two words, thank you. Duke began to play, but this time the music was different. More powerful, more defiant. Because Duke Ellington wasn't just playing notes anymore. He was playing freedom. He was playing dignity. He was playing the sound of a man who'd been defended when he couldn't defend himself. The message spreads. Word of Vic Romano's humiliation spread through New York's underworld like wildfire. By morning, every gangster from Boston to Baltimore knew the story. A made man in Dutch Schultz's organization had been forced to crawl across a dance floor in front of 200 witnesses. The Italian mob's reputation for untouchable authority had been shattered by one man with a razor. Dutch Schultz tried to retaliate. He sent more enforcers to Harlem. 2 weeks later, they were found in the Harlem River with razors embedded in their chests and a note pinned to one body, hostage paid, returned to sender. Within 3 months, the Italian mob had withdrawn from Harlem completely, not because they were weak, because Bumpy Johnson had taught them a lesson. Economics couldn't. Some territories cost more than their worth, and Harlem would cost them everything. The legacy. March 15, 1935, the Savoy Ballroom, the night a straight razor defended more than one man's dignity. The night the Italian mob learned that some kingdoms can't be conquered. The story of Vic Romano crawling across the Savoy Ballroom floor became legend. Not just because of the humiliation, but because of what it represented. The moment when Harlem refused to accept disrespect. Duke Ellington never forgot that night. Neither did the 200 witnesses. Neither did New York's underworld. The lesson Bumpy Johnson taught with his razor that March evening echoes still. Respect isn't given. It's demanded. And sometimes when words fail, when systems fail, when justice fails, a razor speaks louder than everything else. That's the night Duke Ellington learned he had a protector. That's the night Harlem learned it had a king. And that's the night Vincent Romano learned that some men don't just make threats. They make promises. And they always keep them. If this story of dignity, justice, and unbreakable principles moved you, hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to understand what real leadership looks like. Drop a comment. What does protecting your community mean to you? How do we stand up for artists and dignity today? Remember, Duke Ellington's music lives forever. But so does the lesson of that March night. Some things are worth fighting for, worth defending, worth making a man crawl for. Harlem protects its own. Always has, always will.